when I sign in, there's three options.
Oh, okay. When I sign in, there is. So I'm obviously using the wrong one, am I?
Maybe that's the problem. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we should be just about speaking to the world via the wonderful resources of YouTube.
Great stuff.
And it looks as though we're there. Well, we're building anyway. I'm kind of wishing I was trading on Friday, which I wasn't, of course, which is my norm, because I think I've maybe missed the boat on a couple of these pound, euro, Aussie, in particular against the dollar. But I'm hoping for pullbacks today, and if we get those, we may be in business in terms of being able to get into the market. I don't know that there's a whole lot going on, to be fair, and I'm going to have a quick squiz at the Forex Factory just to make sure that what I suspect is true.
Yeah, I think what you suspect is true, mate. And I have to say as well, it might be that there's not going on, but there's not a lot going on today. But there could be a bit of a bubbling ready for Lagarde on Friday,
yes.
specifically the euro. I tell you what, though, what do you think about that euro hourly bar? Currently, really, is that not an attractive looking engulfing bar? Possibly, it hasn't quite bounced off, but it's pretty close to bouncing off the monthly pivot and where last week's weekly pivot was as well on the hourly.
Yeah, tough to trade it down though at the moment. I think I do like the idea of getting it to the daily pivot and the week pivot area.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a tough one for me. I need to see something a little bit more substantial than just that one candle, I think, before I look to trade the risk.
Could it be a short to go long kind of scenario?
Oh, look, love the idea. But yeah, like I say, it's one candle for me at the moment, and that doesn't do too much for me. What I could have a look at, and we'll do it in just a tick. I'll just get rid of the Forex Factory to start with.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there. I've got a sneaking suspicion that the market will buy into this Lagarde speech. Well, I don't think it's a suspicion. I think it's widely held that there'll be some euro buying into the Lagarde speech, because she is expected very much to set the euro on fire. Now, I've got a bit of an issue with that as well, and I'm going to relate this to sport, as we do often. At the moment, we've got Australian cricket or the Australian summer about to launch. And of course, when the summer comes, so does cricket all over the place. That's all you see. And the guy, Steve Smith, I don't know if everyone's au fait with Steve Smith, but he's currently the world's best batsman, as I understand it. I'm not sure how they rate that, but certainly he's rewriting the record books in terms of Australian records. He also has a big what's the word I'm looking for? He's got a big burden to bear, because the whole of Australia is pretty much relying on him, and the media keeps saying, that this is the best cricketer ever, and blah 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 blah, and he's going to break all sorts of records and Bradman's records, and Australia, here we come, etc., etc., etc. I've never seen so much pressure on a guy to actually perform, and that kind of makes me a little bit not scared, but concerned for him, because he's carrying the weight of a country on his shoulders, and I know he's done it before many times, but it just, now they keep saying, all over the television, the Messiah, blah 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 blah, and he's good enough to overcome that, I think. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of pressure on him, and I'm feeling the same thing about Lagarde here. And whether she's able to weather the storm or not, I'm not too sure. Mate, you've got the Open. Do you need to do anything?
No, I don't think so. No, it's going to be fairly muted. We'll come back to it later. But no, at this particular stage, it's not at a price that I want to play at anyway. But we will talk about, it looks kind of bullish. It probably, there's trades, but not for me.
Right. Okay. So we'll just briefly dispense with the Forex Factory. And of course, we do have a lot of minute or accounts of minutes out of the previous Reserve Bank meetings. The ECB's one, we've already had the Australian dollar today, pardon me, and we've got, what else? There's another one somewhere, I can't remember what it is. Oh, the Fed, of course. Their minutes are going to be coming out at some stage too, I thought, but I can't see it here for whatever reason. Oh, there they are. On Wednesday or overnight for most of us on Wednesday. So, the potential for movement is there on 3 different occasions. Don't know that the Aussies moved too much on what was done this morning, but certainly we would expect something to come out of the ECB minutes and the FOMC minutes, which are pretty much both together there, as you can see. Outside of that, the big market move will come. Well, no, I think it's going to lead into it, actually, as I said before. I think we'll have a bullish week on the euro, anticipating Lagarde's speech. I'm just a little bit interested in what happens after she speaks. I've got a funny feeling that the euro might come off a bit as a big retracement on what I suspect, and most of the market, what people I've spoken to suspect as buying into that statement or into that that address. What is it actually? What is it actually about? The European Banking Congress in Frankfurt.
Yeah, I wonder whether it's just because it's a first speech. That's why people get excited. And it's interesting what you're saying about that, the cricketer. Maybe it's actually not Lagarde that disappoints, but actually the content that she's due to address on isn't anything that we can really get our teeth into. And everybody's getting excited because it's the first one, but actually she's not likely to say anything because she's not due to say anything.
And I think she's probably going to take a more circumspect approach than, come out all guns blazing and say we're going to, make Eurozone the best thing ever through monetary policy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that's going to happen. I think she'll probably hint that there are improvements that could be made and, probably got a different approach to Draghi. But, I've got this sneaking suspicion that come Friday I'm going to be a bear, the euro.
Oh, really? Interesting. Do you know, she needs help. Draghi needed help and she needs help. And it's really going to come from the governments, isn't it? And I think the question really comes down to Germany, I suppose, more than anybody else. Does the risk of recession actually start to push Germany into some kind of fiscal policy and monetary policy that could actually help Lagarde out? Because I think what Lagarde probably wants to do is nothing. I think she probably wants to nudge the economies around the Eurozone into action. So the ECB has actually got some tools that they can use, because in some respects, they're almost fighting a battle alone. Even though you've got all these other moving parts, the moving parts aren't really taking part. They're just they're allowing the ECB, or they have allowed the ECB to take the precedent, take the lead, and effectively take the responsibility of rescuing the Eurozone. But there's no doubt about it. Draghi wanted some help, and I think Lagarde's going to want some help. So the question is, will she get it? And if she's going to get it, then really we're probably likely to hear a lot of rhetoric between her and some of the other nations, but before we actually get any meat on the bone.
Maybe she's got a decent relationship with these central bankers. Maybe she's got a decent relationship with the Eurozone leaders as well, because, she's been in the limelight in terms of, directing monetary policy at the end of the day worldwide. So it's going to be a very interesting few months ahead, I do believe. I wish I were in the euro long right now, I've got to tell you that. Because I think there will be continued buying into that speech for the reasons we've just said. But I think come Friday, I'll be looking for a big retracement, as I said before. Because I don't think it's like an interest rate announcement, right? And if the market's bought into the interest rate announcement and they deliver exactly what the market thinks, then why should the market rally on the back of that? Or even worse, if they deliver something like the Kiwis did the other day, right? They were expected to cut and didn't, and the market, of course, had priced in a cut, and then we see a big rally on the back of that with Kiwi US dollar. So, I think this has got the potential to do that. And I'm way ahead of myself, I know, but that's kind of, I'm already focused on that. I don't, because I'm such a contrarian anyway, I guess, is why I've got that attitude. Anyway, we'll see what happens with the euro. I'd love to see a big retracement now. And if that is the case, then happy days. I'll look for an entry long. I'm not sure where I want to see this retrace to. Maybe the weekly pivot would be a great spot. You're fancying that candle, mate?
I like that candle.
Is there a trade there or not, do you think?
I do, yeah, I do. I mean, I personally would. I'd be happy to look for a short here. What I would look for is. Okay. Do you want me to grab the screen with this?
Absolutely. So the issue I've got is the back test of that broken trend line. But the other issue I've got, if I was to think long, and I'm not thinking long by any stretch of the imagination, because we haven't tested the daily.
Oh no, we've lost Jeff. Okay, hold on. Okay, Jeff will be back imminently. So let me show you what I'd be looking for with the euro. We'll talk about the FTSE later on. The euro, to me, I like the monthly pivot up here, and it's certainly a place that the stops can go. But I wouldn't just enter just right now because I don't think it's necessary. What I'd really like to see is a shorter term time frame, kind of like give us something to turn around. So if we look at this on the 15. Then the 15. We'll come to the trade of the week in a bit, by the way, which is not this, but I think that there is an opportunity to sell this to go long, and then if it breaks down, no big deal, no harm, no foul. But I think if the long is around about the daily pivot or the weekly pivot, then we're in pretty good shape. What I would quite like to see is that make sure that the market closes down here. Now that on a 15-minute chart would be good. I think on a 5 would be the best, because then we're going to get something of a reversal bar, and then I wouldn't probably want to play the bar. I think I'd still want my stops well and truly out the way above this monthly pivot, because then if price pops back up again, then we can just come out the trade. So we don't have to risk a great deal. A trade under this bar would be ideal if we get the turnaround, which it doesn't appear like we will just yet, but there's looks like there's around about a 12 pip stop there, so not too high above, not too far away. Here it comes. We just need it to close under this line here. It needs to be around about another 25 seconds, so we'll watch this for the next 25 seconds and see if we can pop down. And if we can pop down, then we will see whether there's a trade. Now, if there's not, I'd want to see it establish itself just for a little bit longer. Here we go. Last 5 seconds coming in here. 3 and 2 and 1. So that's closed just above. So that's probably not that attractive. Yes, you could still enter under this particular level here, and it wouldn't be the worst trade in the world. Let's just check the 15 again. Let's see what that's expressing right now. Okay, this is pretty good. I would wait for one more bar. I think it's okay to wait for one more bar. There's a chance that it does actually tip below that particular price during this.
That becomes a slingshot trade as well, then.
Ah, how you doing there, buddy? You're back.
Good. Yeah, you kicked me out again, you bugger.
Yeah, sorry about that. Do you know, it doesn't happen when I'm on my PC, but when I'm on the laptop, it seems to do it, and I don't know why.
Is that what happens? Okay.
Yes,
it doesn't recognize the IP address or something, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's something strange.
Whatever.
But yeah, anyway, man, I like this, and I was just saying that I think that the entry would be on a short-term time frame. I didn't like it on the 5-minute bar, the very last 5-minute bar we got, because it closed above the trend line. But a close down here below the trend line, giving us some sort of bar, then my entry would be probably around about the 50. God, that's going to be a little way down actually. So let's call it at 1.158, maybe 1.157.5. Let's do it that, just so it's got half a pip of room. But not yet. I want to see this bar close, and if this bar closes under this level, then that's going to look good enough. Certainly, you could enter on the low of that bar if it does close under that level. But I think I'd want to see just a bit of clearing. In an actual fact, if this bar does close down here and it looks negative enough, then I think right on the low of that bar would be fine. So 1.1058. I'd want my stops out the way, so I would want them just above the monthly pivot. And then if it starts messing around and meandering, then I would take the trade off the table. Not just a few closes above here, but if it really starts to spread its legs and start to take off, looking like it might actually test this monthly pivot, then I'd want to take it off. That's the elephant in the room, because we've got close, but we haven't touched it. And okay, we're only 2 pips away, which might be close enough. But I don't usually like close enough. I'm oftentimes a touch is much more agreeable with me. So so that might be the only thing. Now, if we do get a touch of the monthly pivot, then the trade for me actually becomes more attractive, because then I would really be looking up here and just look to see if we can get some sort of spike, because any kind of spike and some sort of reversal, I'd really want to play it. And I'd even be tempted to say, just enter on the monthly pivot and give yourself a 10 pip stop loss, and see if price will come down. I just want to see what a 10 pip stop loss would suggest. 10 pip stop loss. Yeah, I think that would probably be just about get away with it. Let me just see what the last hourly bar was. Yeah, maybe I'd give it 15 actually. A touch of the monthly pivot, more than happy to say just trade the price, give yourself a 15 pip stop loss and see if it breaks down. Because I like that. And like you, mate, I'd probably want it for a long. So then it's a case of what price is the attractive long, and I would suggest it is the daily pivot. I like that. There's a decent horizontal level over here, and it looks right on top of that that daily pivot. And I am going to do a fib as well, because I think these are useful too. Let's do it up to the oops. Well, that'll be close enough. There we go. Yeah, that would be 38% retracement as well if it touches that monthly pivot with price. So coming down there. So that to me looks like a decent price, mate. Entry on the daily pivot at 1.1070 with an entry long at 1.1040, and then stops at break even if this price starts to break down on the downside. So as soon as the long goes on, then the stop on the upside becomes a break even. I quite like it. I have to say, it looks like it should retrace. My question, whenever I look at these trades, mate, is why would it take off before Lagarde? That's what I'm always thinking.
Oh well, I think because the market's expecting her to improve things. I
Yes,
think that's why, and they'll buy into that. And I'm pretty committed to that line of thought. But I should say, and I suppose when the euro reverses, oftentimes it won't retrace until it's gone a fair way. And that's got me a little bit concerned here as well. So I don't really want to get involved unless it really stands out to me. And the way it'll stand out to me is if I get a false break of what I've got as a resistance trade line or trend line. And there is one on the 30-minute chart that looks reasonable, and it's a genuine slingshot setup, if you like, on a 30-minute. But I much prefer to trade that as a retracement or out of a retracement than I do as a reversal. So I'm just not that comfortable with it, if you get where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair.
I
I
see
think
it,
that's fair.
absolutely see it. I'm a massive fan of trading to the daily pivot. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But I just don't see what I need to see at the moment. That's all.
Yeah, no, well, I would certainly bow to your expertise in the euro. I'm certainly, I am not a currency trader per se, and I'm not a euro trader either. It's probably, one of the ones I would be closer to just because of the proximity of the UK. But that's, I would certainly, so I'd bow to your knowledge on that, and it would just be really, I guess, more of a play of what I would do with the footsie. If I'd seen that on the footsie, then I would be happy to take a technique like that where I'm bouncing it off the daily pivot, but really probably looking for the long. That the market has come up high enough to be a long. And the good thing about that is, if it was to work out, if the market dips down a little bit lower, it's no big deal. You just, either hold on to it and see if it can start to pick back up again, or if it just starts to break down again, then you just close it and you've made the profit between these 2 points.
Yeah,
So
the way I will play it, if it does go down to the daily pivot, is look for an entry there and just scale it back a fair bit, and then if it goes to the weekly pivot, then I'll look for a decent trade from that level.
Yeah,
I think
sounds good, mate.
That's the kind of way I'd look to play this. You've got me interested, though. I'm a massive fan of daily pivot tests on the euro, as you know. And
yes,
this is the second day so far that it hasn't been tested. Yesterday or Friday, great trades, great setups on Friday. I wish I was around, but then we're all geniuses in that respect, of course.
yeah.
I can definitely see setups there that would have got me interested, and I am disappointed because I wanted to get long the euro. Yeah, it's impossible for me to go long now, and I understand that, and I recognise that, and that's what's got me a little bit concerned, because this could explode today. It really could.
Yeah.
It is Monday, however, and I'm not an explosive kind of guy on a Monday. I'd much rather see the market retrace. So we'll see.
It's a weird day, mate. I've been looking at this footsie. Do you want me to quickly cover the footsie?
Mate, go. Yeah.
Just while I'm on, while I've got the charts here. The FTSE 100. Now, I made a little bit of an error on Friday, and it was a little error. It's not a big error at all, and I'm still a little bit frustrated with myself. I'm not going to go as far as to say I'm annoyed with myself, but I'm a little bit frustrated with myself that I didn't just really just shut the charts down, because there was very little information for me to take the protective trade that I took, and yet I took it because I was just a bit jaded. It's been a tough week, and I've been really scrapping for and it's not even that I've been getting scraps. It's been okay. That the actual week, on profit wise, it's been okay, but yeah, but it's been hard work, and also I've got a specific target that I'm looking to hit, and I'm still a couple of percent off that target, and I think if I'd let things go, well, I know if I'd let things go, I would have hit that target. So I think that's the other slightly frustrating thing for me, is that my kind of work for the month, as I said yesterday, would have been done. But that it is what it is, and really what's been going on with the FTSE is that it hasn't really been enjoying the movement that we've really seen in the other markets. We've seen the US market climb, we've seen the DAX climb, we've seen the CAC 40 climb. The other markets around the world are doing pretty well. Even in China, they've started, they're okay today, and in Asia, considering what's going on with Hong Kong. Now, when I woke up on Friday, I saw this gap. So when I saw that gap, I checked out what was the reason for the gap, and it was down to Stephen Mnuchin coming out. I couldn't remember his name yesterday, but Stephen Mnuchin coming out and saying that the phase one of the deal with China is pretty much done. That they're pretty much signed. Since then, the caveats come that this is the time it's most likely to break down, right towards the end of the deal. But still, there was a decent kind of rhetoric coming out from the US to do with the trade, the phase one trade deal, which kind of washed out what Donald Trump had said a few days ago. And yet the FTSE 100 was not able to catch a bid. It just went and came and went, and it just dropped and dropped, which made it a very difficult market, because I was, looking long and quite happy to look long. And I did take a trade long down here, which I sold with a little bit of movement. It was not a bad profit, but a little bit of movement to the upside, because I'm still looking for the longs in the market. But the problem was, when we got to this particular point, this horizontal level, it was getting towards the end of the day with the UK, and I was starting to think, you know what, I better take the protection here into the weekend, because if Donald Trump comes out and says something, then we could be in trouble. But then, the market continued to ease up, and it eventually kind of touched almost the daily pivot from Friday, which would have been, this would have been a better price, up here, not far away, but still, 10 pips away, 15 pips away from where I entered. And the reason that it's a better price is not the 15 pips, but because of what it has to get through to get to my particular level now. It could easily happen, because, you look at the price action so far this morning, and it has tried again to push up, but it's being trapped by the weekly pivot. It's being trapped by the daily pivot in some respects. So we're just kind of like in a bit of a pinball motion going on. And it's also being trapped a little bit by this trend line here. Now there's a couple of trend lines going on. There's this one along here, and there's also the broader one here. But ultimately, the price is kind of trapped within within this kind of this price point here, just unable to get through. And
mate,
just when
we were
I think
talking about this off air, and the big question, of course, is why is the FTSE lagging the other markets? And the answer seems to be the pound. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I think the election is just holding it back. But you know what my concern is? If the FTSE is not able to break through these levels, now I don't mind having these. I've got a load of longs up here somewhere. Now that they don't bother me, because I'm in complete balance right now. What is currently on my mind is, should I really be looking long? Should I really be that concerned about it going long? Because what I'm looking at is a market which is unable to break out, and a worldwide market which is reacting off what I think is a load of fluff. And when it comes down to it, are we actually going to get some meat from the trade phase one deal, which is effectively says there's no deal, and then the other markets come down and the FTSE comes down hard? Because if that's the situation, then I'm quite happy. I don't mind this short being in the market, and even if it took off, actually the short in the market doesn't bother me, because I think that there is only a matter of time before this market does come down hard. I think there's a wider, broader picture on the FTSE, which just looks quite ominous. So the question for me really comes down to timing. If I am with the market, with the trades that are long, I can manage those. I will just put stops in the right place and give it a little bit of room. But the ones that are short, I kind of don't want to miss it, because if this comes, as I say, if it comes down, I think it's coming down pretty hard, mate. And it's just a question of where I try and enter, because entering in the wrong place, and I'm going to get similar price action to I've had, where it comes down and bounces, comes down, gaps up, comes down, bounces. I've just got all this price action, which is just completely committal for a period, but then by the end of the day, the commitment is just gone.
Sounds like you've still got work to do, mate.
Yes, I do. Look at this pattern. This is the other problem. I don't know how clear this one is. Let me just put this on a clean chart. Look at this pattern though. This is the left shoulder here. This is the head, and this is a right shoulder. Now we haven't broken down, but while the worldwide market is going long, the FTSE is putting in a pattern like this on a 4-hour chart, which the 4-hour chart is a fairly well trusted chart. So a time frame, I should say. So it's not a bad one to be looking out for. That to me indicates something fairly ominous. And I only have to go up to the broader picture. This is a weekly chart. Same deal. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder. So my confidence that I kind of had last week is starting to wane and fade a little bit. So you know, as you say, I've got some work to do, and I think the real work is to find the reason.
I'm going to say, where are you going to find that? Where do you look? Do you look at the other markets and think, well, okay, we've got a topping pattern now. This is ready to go. And do I cover longs, or what do you do?
Yeah, I think so. Do you know what? I'm literally just waiting for a signal on the other market. I'm not looking for a signal on the FTSE. I'm looking for the signal on the other markets to turn over. Gold is continuing to move to the downside. You know, but gold is at 1460, and gold is continuing to show signs of weakness. This is a 4-hour chart on gold. Hold on, this is a 4-hour chart on gold, and it continues to show signs of weakness. Possibly we start to see an inverted head and shoulders, but that's way off being formed, or even suggesting being formed. So nothing to see here. But let's see if gold does start to hang on here. It's not the sweet spot. It's not the price that everybody's been talking about. But gold continues to show signs of weakness. The Dow Jones continues to show signs of strength. The S&P continues to show signs of strength. Nasdaq making all-time highs.
Incredible,
is Kakaron's doing okay. It's near its highs. The DAX is in a bit of a kind of a holding pattern, if you like. The VIX is actually, the VIX gapped up this morning, interestingly. Gosh, I hadn't noticed this before. That's a strange thing going on there. Okay, this might be a little bit of indication, but the VIX has been moving to the downside, and it looked fairly weak. But the VIX is a volatility indicator or index, and that's taken a pretty decent hop to the upside, which is quite interesting. But I'm looking for more than a hint, I guess. You know, this is a hint, but it doesn't tell me enough. But I'm looking for something to actually grab onto. Fairly decent looking daily bar on the FTSE as well on Friday, and it's still in an uptrend. So the FTSE isn't really giving me what I need, but I think, just back to your question, the answer is going to come from the other markets, in my opinion. You know, if I see the American markets turn over, then I'll be looking for shorts in the FTSE to come down hard. And then I could probably just put a stop entry under a level. You know, maybe under this level would be enough. If it comes down hard, if we get another move to the upside and retracement, and then I'll put it under the next level.
All makes sense, mate. I like it. I like the way you're thinking. I don't envy you, though. I think it's a tough road to hoe.
Yeah, it is. It is. But you know what? Is that because there's just not enough information today?
Oh, look, I think, what I think of Mondays today is my let's get a handle on what's likely to happen and see if we've got a bias day. What I do see is a little bit of strength around the euro. I see a little bit of strength around the pound. I see a little bit of strength around the Aussie, not so much today, but going into today and certainly through Friday. So I'm seeing the dollar come off, basically, is what I'm saying. And the exception to that is dollar yen, which just throws me into complete confusion. I guess the yen's coming off. You could say that definitely.
Yeah.
So,
geez.
Yeah. That seems to be the case big time. Why? Don't know. Are we really in a massive risk on scenario? I would have thought not, but the market's saying yes at the moment. Certainly,
it certainly is. Do you know? Just on that, mate, and let's talk some currencies as well, because the currencies that really interest me this week, specifically the CAD, I have to say, and I was looking at CAD yen, and if I'm completely honest, I'm a little bit I'm a little bit nonplussed about direction. I just think there will be some movement in this, and that's a start. And when I look at this CAD yen, then I am seeing this kind of this daily pattern kind of starting to form. I would be quite happy with a short on CAD yen around about 82.70. I think that would be a really good place to start to look for the CAD yen to drop, and I quite like it. You know, if it was to get up there in the next I don't know, not sure what period it needs to be, but the next day or so, then I'd be looking at a CAD yen short. I think that maybe the yen is just a bit early. You know, you've been calling it for a bit of a long. I'm pretty sure Julian's saying the same thing, and maybe it's just a day or so early. The other one I like is Kiwi CAD for a long. I'd like this one a little bit further down, and maybe down to this point. I think the whole thing with oil that's going on right now is quite interesting, but
it is
you know,
quite interesting, and it appears to have broken through the top of a range at the moment. So that's interesting. Where we go from there is a good question. I'm not completely up to date on the CAD recent news. I know it was sailing along quite well economically, but has that changed somewhat? I don't know.
Well, just I thought the outlook wasn't particularly favorable. I am obviously taking into account some of the seasonality that we might as well see with the CAD, and looking at the seasonality index here. Not sure how big that is, whether people can see it that well, but this is where's my November? Here we go, November. November is it starts to come up, but look at the move to the downside in the Canadian dollar during the November period, and you know, if we also look against some of the other markets as well, if I can. Let's have a look at seasonality. I'm working on a fairly small screen here. Here we go. Let's see if I've got the. Here we go. So we want Forex, and let's have a look at the. Let's have a look at the Canadian dollar, and see what might be a decent indication. But here we go. So. Looks like it rallies against the Aussie. Now, the one I was really interested in was the Kiwi and the yen. So this will be against the yen. Seems to rally against the yen. So, you know, Canadian strength, then maybe we are looking for some yen buying against the yen. But during December, maybe a little bit weaker. But the Kiwi was the one that I was most interested in. Canadian dollar versus the Kiwi dollar. Very, very weak during the end of November and into December. So I think the Kiwi CAD for a long starts to look even more attractive when you look at that. Maybe it's not the best pair, I don't know, but I'll tell you that the reason that I like the pair is because of the inverted head and shoulders here. So I've got kind of my left shoulder here. This kind of, you know, it's almost like a W bottoming pattern or a complex inverted head and shoulders, but I like it. It looks to me like a reversal pattern, and I like the seasonals on the CAD yen, and also I quite like the COT data if I can get that up. Let me just see if I can bring up the COT data as well with the CAD, when we kind of like look at what's going on with the commercials and the non-commercials with the Canadian dollar, it looks to me that we have this is Markets Made Clear, by the way, guys, the website. So if anybody's interested in that, then you can pop over to that and get all this information. Here is my COT data. So you can see that these are the commercial positions here, compositions right up here, and they are starting to ease back of their Canadian dollars. And you can see that the non-commercials looks like they're just starting to ease back with some of the buying as well, actually. So with the commercials looking like they're kind of easing back with their positions. then they will probably start to have to buy if the price comes down. But the price has to come down first with the Canadian dollar. So that's the other reason that I'm quite interested in the CAD for a short.
Cool. What's that? What's the euro doing on those reports, mate?
Oh, let's have a look. Yeah, the euro. In actual fact, I am going to bring it onto my big screen, and then I'll bring it over to you. So, the euro, when it comes down to the seasonal, in fact, let's have a look at the COT data as well as the seasonal. So, euro, here we go. Euro on the COT data.
There's a trade there on Kiwi CAD on the daily chart there now.
Yeah, let me bring it over to you. So, this is the euro on the COT data. Euro on the COT data is probably maybe a little bit, possibly a little bit. Why can't I bring that over? Oh, I mean, this is probably the most recent data here, actually, but I think it's a little bit confused. It's sort of like the commercials, long and the short positions are pretty close together. There's no kind of there's no gaps between them. The non-commercial positions look like they are easing back on the selling of the euro, and maybe there's a little tick to the upside on the buying. So that's the commercial data. That's the the market data. Probably more interested in the non-commercials with this particular pair because they are so close together. So we need to know what the investors are doing, and it looks like the investors are easing back on their shorts. They haven't really kind of committed to long yet, but it looks like it could happen at some point fairly soon. When it comes down to the seasonals, let me just bring that to you as well. And the seasonal indicator with the euro is like this. And we can see that November tends to be fairly bullish towards the end of November. In fact, it's very bullish, isn't it? Into December. So it looks like some likely buying out of the euro block could be on the cards, mate.
Okay, that kind of puts a rubber stamp on the thought processes that we're going through, I suppose.
Yeah, which is what we're after, isn't it? Just to kind
exactly
of
right.
Get some confirmatory bias. I think the interesting thing might be with the euro is picking the right pair, isn't it? If maybe we can see that it's strong against the dollar there, but maybe there's another opportunity with something else instead.
Despite my bias, you've really got to start thinking yen, because it's the weakest currency on the chart at the moment that I can see.
Yeah,
anyway.
that's a point. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, you would say that the euro yen could be the one. So
interestingly, if you have a look at the past month of data in terms of relative strength against the US dollar, the euro is actually the weakest currency. Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yes, it is, and I suppose the I suppose the interesting thing when we see data like that, then it suggests that maybe the risk there, therefore, is to the upside.
Yes, absolutely.
So maybe that's why we're. I mean, we haven't. It's not very clear with the COT data there, but certainly seasonally, it looks like the euro could start to move to the upside. I think if we see that COT data start maybe being a little bit more in agreement, then an explosive move could be a little bit more likely.
Yeah, and it's kind of underlying or underlining the kind of reluctance I have to trade this short at the moment. I think all of that information that we've just looked at is saying long. Absolutely, we're looking for retracement to get in. Whether we get it or not now is completely another story, of course.
Yeah, and it's also whether you trade the retracement, isn't it? Because as we've been talking about, there is a way to get long here by trading the retracement first and effectively making your long free. But the danger of that is that you are swimming against a current, and what could be a fairly strong current too.
Yeah, look, it's not yet, and that's the issue. You know, at the end of the day, if you have a look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is still telling us we're definitely in a downtrend, and that, you know,
Yeah, do you know, I have to say, you know, where we are with the euro, I'm just looking at this 15-minute chart. The 15-minute chart has now put in a fairly indecisive bar. And I still look at this and think, actually, you know, that the price is better. I don't like the fact that it hasn't broken down, but I do like the fact that it's slowing up here. And I like the fact that that we've got some pivots above. Um, I'd want to get you know, a bit of clear water between the pivot and price. I wouldn't want to just go a few pips, but I think 15 pips above the low of this bar for a little entry still looks okay, especially if you're going in kind of light. You know, I think that looks all right for a bit of a punt, for a retracement down to the daily pivot to try and take it on. I mean, it's 20 pips or so away from that particular entry, so there'd still be a better than one-to-one ratio, which means that you could take a bit of profit and still enter the market, you know, with a 15 pip stop loss and a 15 pip entry. So I think there's something to be said for looking for this retracement. I mean, you know, when it comes down to how to trade the euro and where it's going, there are probably maybe safer techniques, but I quite like that. I quite like that the way it is right now. This would be the trend line that I'd be looking for as well, just for a little break along here. I have to say, I'm almost tempting myself, mate.
Mate, it's there now as a break and retest. But my rules prevent me from getting into this. I won't trade into the low of the day without profit. Number one. The low of the day is obviously the first bar of the day, which is about 5 pips away. That's not enough really for me to take the profit. So I think I'm on a 1-to-1 there to daily pivot by my entry rules. So I don't see it as an attractive proposition for me.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it won't go there. Absolutely doesn't mean that.
I mean, I think it's one of those that that if anybody out there wants to take it, then let us know how it goes.
Sure, I've got no problem with it. It's a setup after all. At the end of the day,
Well, he's struggling, mate. I haven't really got anything else. You know, that euro is looks to me like the best trade around right now. I think the Kiwi CAD we're waiting on a bit more retracement as well. I haven't got anything else with the FTSE. The FTSE 100 is pretty much going nowhere. It's broken the weekly pivot, but it's back under again now. Don't really get a clear idea of direction. Probably a little bit concerned about the downside right now, but I haven't got a way yet to play it that I can play.
That one I do like.
You like this?
Yeah, that's a long for me.
Yeah, well, do you know, again, you know, that the long wouldn't be the worst trade in the world either. You know, the rest of the markets are have gone, and I wonder whether the FTSE could play a bit of catch up today. But I don't like how sluggish this market is, so I'm probably going to sit it out for the day.
Yeah, Monday market, mate. It's got it
very much so. Yeah, very much so.
Well, mate, I'll have a quick squeeze around a couple of currency pairs, and then we'll call it quits, eh?
Great stuff. Sounds good.
Now, there's some chance I'll get rid of you here. I hope not, but let me see if it works. Are you still alive?
I'm still alive.
Happy days. All right. I'm seeing a lot of things here that are counter the world, I think, and that does suit me. I'm not afraid of that. That's really a cool thing. But they're not setting up, and that's the issue that I've got. And maybe that's a good thing. I'm not sure. When I look at this chart, I think we made a pretty good exit on euro dollar. We missed it by a few pips. That was one of the levels that I had in mind. That was another one of the levels that I had in mind to get this down to. But at the end of the day, what we have got for mine is the completion of that M topping pattern. That's done. That's out. It's gone. So we're in a new phase, and that new phase could well be to the high side and back at the end of the day, if you have a look at this on a daily time frame, you could actually start to think we're going to have a big range here, starting probably over here. You could call it there. And this is why I had these levels on my chart, right? You could call it there, but let's tighten it up to there and bring it even back in to the recent highs. That starts to make sense to me. So we could be going into range period here. I'm prepared to actually play that if I can find a reason why. That reason why becomes obvious to me if I get a pullback to the areas that we've just spoken about in the last half hour or so. That is daily and weekly pivot, right? So that's where I see this happening. I'm starting to get myself a little bit excited about the short now, Ash, because that looks a whole lot better to me now. When I look at that daily chart, and this is my first analysis of this cross this week. So when I start to see things like that, really what's happened here, we've come off the resistance from here, the support from here. So it's recency that we're talking about, and we're now coming to a resistance level, which is, by my way of thinking, potentially going to drive this back down here, maybe to that level. There's a nice confluence of that trend line there as well. So that's exactly what I'm thinking now. Like I said before, I'm not prepared to play it on the small time frames just yet, but I could definitely be talked into that if we get a good reason so to do. 4-hour chart's not showing me too much. I'd really like to see that hit the monthly pivot before I look to trade that short on the 4-hour. The hourly, and I know we're spending a fair bit of time on this, hasn't quite set up yet, but like I said before, I'd have to trade into the low of the day here, and my rules prevent me from doing that. I'd have to take at least a 14 pip risk. If I'm going to put my stop there, I'd be rather foolish. You'd have to skip it up above the monthly pivot. So you're probably talking, say, a 20 pip risk, and my reward is about 5.5 before I get to the low of the day, which as I say, my rules prevent me from trading into it. Then the daily pivot, you've got still not 1-to-1. Weekly pivot gives me probably about 1-to-1. That's why I'm not fussed on the trade so much, because I do expect it to bounce in this area. 1-to-1's not bad, but by the time I take my first profit out of this, it becomes, at least 1/2-to-1. So my father, who was a bookmaker, told me 2 things. He said, never bet odds on and never run upstairs. I could never work out the run upstairs part, but the bet odds on thing has stuck with me throughout my life. So if anybody knows what he meant by that, I'd be very happy to say. He's been dead for 40 years, so I can't ask him. And and it remains part of my vocabulary, I suppose. So that's my issue here. If I get a really good reason to trade this short on a smaller time frame, I absolutely will. I think the way that may happen is, hang on, I'll get rid of this if I can. There we go. That may happen like this, but it's a long bow to draw. If I can break above the monthly pivot here, which is really what I want to see happen, to hit that monthly pivot, get back underneath that trend line, then retest it and give me an entry around about this level here. So I've got room to take profit before the low of the day. Then I can trade through the daily pivot if I need to, and exit at the weekly pivot and hope it hits that trend line there and bounces. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. So I need to be patient here. If it goes, it goes. I haven't got a problem with that, because I've got a set plan here. And if that set plan comes off, then happy days. If it doesn't, so be it. Now, cable's really interesting. It's broken out of this descending, well, I won't call the flag pattern, it's gone too long. I'll call it a descending channel, which is far more accurate. Gives me a very, very similar outlook to what the euro is showing me. We're at highs here that I won't trade into, so it's impossible for me to go long. And like I said on Friday, it would have been nice to get into these moves on Friday, but that wasn't the case. So again, I'm looking for probably price to come back to here and show me that it wants to go long and then go long. Can't go long from here. The reverse side of that, of course, if it does come back inside here and gets below these pivots and retests them from below, that's going to be a very bearish signal for me, and I'll look to trade it short. So there's a lot to consider here, but there's nothing to trade at the moment for that reason. The Aussie, again, nice setup on Friday. Break, false break, showed it, went. Where are we now? Well, this is one that has come back and tested the daily pivot already. Are we ready to trade this long is the question. Look, I'm still not a bull on the Aussie. I just can't talk myself into being a bull on the Aussie. And I don't see a reason to be a bull on the Aussie except the fact that we've got a nice triple bottom, call it quadruple bottom if you want, and a higher low. There's already a trade there right now if you wanted to take that on the weekly chart. The daily charts, however, is giving me exactly what I can see on the euro at the moment, which is an approach of a support trend line and then a bounce back away from it. Let me just show you that. Exactly the same scenario setting up here, right? On the euro, this is a daily chart, however, and it confuses the heck out of me, I've got to say. Because this is, how can I put it? Reminiscent, but it's not the same. It's reminiscent of a sentiment cycle to me. And if that's the case, then this may well be a launch pad for the Aussie. I just can't talk myself into being an Aussie bull for whatever reason. The flip side of that, as always, is can I be a dollar bull? And everything that I've spoken to anybody about in the last week or so is telling me that the dollar is coming off and it's going to come off reasonably substantially. So that could, of course, force the Aussie long. The long setup that I see at the moment, which is break and retest of this trend line, is probably the way to go. But gee whiz, there's got to be a better entry than that, hasn't there? We are now 100 pips from entry. Surely I can find something better than that to get into this market. Do I trade this bar? This one being the second, I guess, entry. That gives me a risk of 100 odd pips. I think I'd have to put my stops under here, make that 130. Potential profit, and I totally see this level is not even 2 to 1. So when I look to trade weekly charts, I'm looking for far better than that. You know, I'm looking for 5, 6, 8, 10 to 1 if I'm prepared to leave my money in the market for that long. So I really just totally confused here as to which way to get into this market, and I think on balance that I'm just going to wait for a better opportunity on the smaller time frames to trade it long. How do I see that happening? Well, I saw it on Friday, and as I say, we may have missed that. There's going to be other opportunities, of course. There'll be another trend line coming up here. If we were to come back here and give me a false break of that later in the week, I'd be happy with that. But at the moment, the answer is NO, stay out. So, mate, that's pretty much me. They're the three majors that I'll be looking at all week. There's a plan on each and every one of them, but we have to wait our turn, and that's not unusual.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Not unusual at all, and no big deal. We're as you say, quite used to it. And if that's what the day suggests we do, then that's what the day has to be. I mean, we don't control the market in many respects. We just have to play what's in front of us. Oh, I'll tell you what, though, that euro's looking good, isn't it? It really is looking good. Okay, well, we'll come back and see how that turned out tomorrow to see whether there was any trade on that. I'd be interested to know whether anybody took that. Obviously, you'd be taking it off your own management and do with it what you will. But we'd be certainly interested to know whether anybody did end up trading that, or I certainly will.
Yeah, look, best of luck with it. I hope you all get a winner out of it.
Yeah, well, of course, that's what we're here for. So we'll be back tomorrow, mate. Same trade time, same trade channel. Let's hope we get a little bit more movement in the market. We haven't really checked the news for the week, but maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. I don't think there's anything specific today anyway. So in fact, there's not. I'm just having a quick look. Nothing specific today
No,
anyway.
it's all about meeting minutes across the week, and of course Friday's Lagarde. So
great stuff. Okay. All right, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail tomorrow, and do it all again then. But have a great rest of the evening where you are. Is it, mate?
It is, mate. It is 7:56 p.m. currently.
Enjoy the evening, and enjoy the evening for you two guys, or the late afternoon, evening, and we'll be back same trade time, same trade channel tomorrow.
Which is what time, mate?
It's going to be at 5 to 8.
5 to 8. That's a date. Don't be late, everyone. See you then. Bye-bye for now.
See you then, guys. Bye-bye.